Happening now. We'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 331 for July the 24th, 2024. My name is Wes Fryer, and I'm coming to you from just outside Charlotte, North Carolina in Stallings, where I am a middle school STEM and media literacy teacher and in the midst of teaching a space coding camp and teaching a 2-week adult teaching the conspiracies online course. So got a few things juggling here a little bit, but life is good. And Dr. Neiffer, I understand you're a little further away from the fire tonight. So
I am. It doesn't mean that the temperature is any less. It's 103 outside right now.
Oh, no.
I'm in Great Falls, Montana, in north central Montana, and it's pretty sticky here and has been for the better part of 2 to 3 weeks now. So, in fact, my parents had to buy a new window air conditioner and are replacing fans around the house because the temperature is just too much. But luckily, it's going to be down to just the 90s next week. And it's kind of funny. I may have mentioned this last week, but a couple weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas for the InstructureCon, the folks that make Canvas, and record temperatures there. They in fact had beaten the single high temperature record a couple days before we arrived there, but it was averaging about 115 high. And so I left, came back to Missoula, where I got off the airplane. And it was 91 degrees. I was like, it's weird. This feels cool. But 25 degrees difference, right, between those two temperatures.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hello to Peggy George, who's with us live. Unfortunately, she says it's 109 in Phoenix right now. So my goodness. I think it's in the 80s here. So y'all need to just come take a little trip to North Carolina. We've had some warm weather for us, but we're in this nice little cycle where we're getting rain every day. And anyway, oh my gosh, crazy. Well, Dr. Neiffer, what are we going to do tonight on this EdTech Situation Room podcast? We've got live viewers. What's up with this?
Yeah, it's a good question. Apparently, our reputation is expanding, but the EdTech Situation Room is a podcast about technology, and we will be going through all of the links we've collected over the last week. You can get a copy of those yourself at our website, edtechsr.com. But tonight, we will likely take a look at some security news, probably in a couple of different ways, media, Microsoft news, Apple news, and then it's pretty hard to escape the AI and education stuff. So we'll probably have to take that on just a tiny bit ourselves tonight. But Dr. Fryer, where would you like us to start tonight?
Oh my gosh, well, you did a wonderful job bringing forward a lot of articles from the past. Let's talk about this crazy CrowdStrike Microsoft thing. I think you dropped a bunch of articles in there. Do you want to pick up that Verge article and then I'll chime in with a opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty hard to avoid this news. And to be honest, it's been, a week, 2 weeks almost of extraordinary news. If you include all the politics and what's been going on there. In deference to my mental health, I've been trying to only lightly cover what's going on in the politics of the world. But there was a massive outage of computers last Thursday is when the outage was. And we might have mentioned it on last week's podcast briefly, but it impacted a lot of different systems in a lot of different industries. And probably the one that received the most attention nationally was the airlines, because most of the major national airlines were completely down for several hours, requiring a physical reboot. I saw several photographs of technicians in the Seattle airport, sitting there with their USB keyboards and mice trying to reboot computers to be able to diminish the impact of the so-called outage, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And as it turns out, we have more information now about what happened. So according to, this was today in The Verge by Tom Warren, CrowdStrike, which is the folks that made the software that created the buggy update that significantly impacted computers really around the world, pushed out an update to 8.5 million Windows machines, causing those systems to crash last week. And the update was meant to gather telemetry on possible threats, threat techniques, but ended up crashing the systems instead. And one of the things from this article I thought was super interesting is the problem update was an entire 40 kilobytes, which is
Really?
not
Wow.
very
Wow.
big, as it turns out, right? So tiny update. And the bug itself created a lot of issues really quickly and brought these systems to their knees. And CrowdStrike, to their credit, has taken responsibility for the issue and are actively working on making sure that this doesn't happen again. But pretty extraordinary stuff. And Wes, you're a little more plugged into, I think, maybe the IT director community than I am through your social channels. I didn't hear of any schools being impacted. Did you?
I did not hear of any schools. Our middle daughter, had just had a major surgery, was in the hospital, and that morning, my wife was with her. The nurse came in, tried to access her records to update, couldn't do it. It was completely inaccessible. So that didn't pose a life-threatening situation for her. But one of the kids who's in my coding camp, they, I guess, subscribed to CrowdStrike, so their home computer was taken offline. But no, I haven't heard of schools being affected, and of course the fact that it's the summertime. In terms of students, with attendance or buses or that kind of impact. Central office, having some glitches, probably makes less headlines than lots of kids and teachers in classrooms being affected. But I think that it really shows this vulnerability that we have in our society. I immediately thought, like probably many people, that this was a cyber attack.
Yeah.
We have reported on the show multiple times, not, tinfoil hat, zombie apocalypse, fringe YouTubers. We're talking like the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Pentagon, these different agencies that have issued formal press reports or press releases talking about the threat posed by both state actors and non-state actors who have penetrated our critical infrastructure and have capacity to wreak havoc. So I just think that it behooves all of us to take some reasonable preparations, just like, FEMA recommends on ready.gov. Hopefully if we have some kind of an outage, kind of like this, it's not going to be, prolonged, like in terms of like multi-week or something, but it is a substantial disruption to have that many machines that are having trouble. And one of the things, and without going into too much detail, I mean, some videos I've been watching, like we really should give some thought to our carry-on luggage, right? I don't know if you have had to spend the night in an airport before, but what are you going to do if this kind of thing? You haven't? Okay, good for you.
No, I have. It was terrible.
You have? Yeah.
It was purely terrible.
So, we need to think about preparation, just reasonable stuff, because we are living in a society that is highly, highly vulnerable to disruptions, which can be like this. It can be what appears to be innocuous. Somebody screwed up. But Peggy and I were talking there in the chat room. Even if we're Mac users, we're very dependent upon many businesses that have Windows systems. And more than likely, your local water company, your electrical company, or co-op, the critical infrastructure uses a whole lot of technology. So I just saw this as a cautionary tale that we need to make sure that we're prepared. And even when we think about airfare or not airfare, but air travel, think about that and what you've got in your bag, and especially medications, things like that you're not going to be able to pick up. Don't just have enough for one day or plan that you're going to have your checked bag with you. You may or may not. And I think that is a positive that can be drawn from this, but it was really pretty shocking, I think, how widespread it was and what a huge impact it did. And I bet it caught tons of people by surprise, because who would have thought a CrowdStrike security update? And is CrowdStrike going to be able to recover from this, right? Who's going to want to put CrowdStrike on their system after, they've done a blunder like this? So,
yeah. Well, I want to pull in now an article from Vox Media, and Adam Clark Estes writes, on precisely this issue, and he makes a lot of the same points that you are, that CrowdStrike is in a dominant position in the United States when it comes to cybersecurity, and is one of the major players in this area. But the fact that, and again, now that we know it was a little 40K update that was accidentally pushed, and there were a couple of other Verge articles today. I think one of them I may have thrown into show notes that kind of talked about minute by minute what it looked like, and they realized almost immediately that they had done something wrong, that something had been pushed out. But by then it was too late because of the way fixes are pushed. I would imagine there is a lot of discussion and reporting to come. And I don't know what the alternative is, right? I mean, yes, having backup systems may be a part of it. I don't know if making sure there's a clipboard and a notepad next to every computer is a piece of it either. But there is major, and I've heard the number $5 billion in direct costs in this. That number likely to become dramatically higher in the coming days and weeks. I still know second and third hand some people that are stuck in airports and in locations. Delta, as recently as this morning, still had problems with some of their routes, trying to get things back on schedule again. But really extraordinary impact. And if one little 40K update can do this, it would suggest that perhaps a cyber attack, even a modest one, could create extraordinary chaos.
Absolutely. I think we can bring this back to the educational level in the classroom and talk about the preparation that we need to give students for technology literacy and fluency and media literacy, right? We are at a place now, I think, in society where, just like every board of directors would never think about having a board that didn't have finance people on it, people that know accounting, people that know budgets. I mean, that's going to be a no-brainer. Well, I think the same thing is true when it comes to cyber knowledge and the ability to know how to protect an organization, what penetration testing is, what it means to have redundant backups. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to know how to do all the things, but we absolutely across society are so dependent upon these technological systems that I think we really need to elevate the level of digital literacy and media literacy that people have. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to examine our lives and what our vulnerabilities are, right? My sister, and I'm not going to remember the name of that hack, but you remember a month or so ago, or maybe it was a couple months, we had that payment processor. There was a big company that got hit by a ransomware attack, but it was taking out the payment processors of all these like dental offices and medical offices. Well, that impacts the work that my sister does because she is technical support for a dental software company, and they ended up having to migrate all of these little companies, offices onto a separate payment processor. But that required individually touching software and machines and making changes. Similarly, this CrowdStrike situation, I understand, required like a physical, it wasn't just something that could be done remotely. It was like, I think you had to boot into safe mode and do something to roll back a firmware or something, and then you could go ahead and get your system back up. But, there's something to be said for diversity. It was a lot of times in security, we'll say, keep patched, keep updated. This is a case where, the latest patch and the latest update caused the problem. So, the issues can come from all sides, but we need to be following best practices. Certainly, one of them, the number one things that all of us can face, and I've had, this isn't related to CrowdStrike, but in addition to me, having my Facebook account suspended for 2 weeks because of what amounted, I think, to an algorithmic glitch and problem, I have read about, heard about, had lots of more people contact me about that same kind of thing. So, password security fits into this. Any kind of vulnerability that we might have, and I don't know, man, maybe it's the kind of thing where you need to sit down, if you can, with a significant other, or, with one of your children, or just depending on what your situation is, and analyze it, and make sure that you've got food and water and things like that set aside. Yeah. But in a business, how are you going to, continue to function? And for those in school IT, it's sort of like whenever, and it hasn't happened often, I've been in a big box store and the power has gone out. I mean, there is no checking out. There is no going to the register. It is all about scanning. There's no backup. we are going to have systems, obviously, in school for taking attendance and accounting for our people and being able to, get folks home and those kind of things. So I think the kinds of planning that we need to do certainly go well beyond the fire drill, tornado drill, a sadly active shooter. We need to think about cyber, and it needs to be thought of at a variety of different levels. So, and even for us with communication and stuff like that. I don't have my ham radio license, finished yet. I was trying to get that for a while, and then I didn't pass the test the first time because I didn't study well enough. And anyway, but like seriously, batteries, how are you going to keep your cell phone operating? I visited with a woman today whose child lives in Houston. Our son and his wife were fortunate when this latest hurricane, it was a tropical storm, Beryl or whatever, they were without power for less than 24 hours. But, her child had been out for like 5 days or something like that. So imagine no electricity at your house for 5 days. And this isn't even a hurricane. This was a relatively minor tropical storm. Got to think about being prepared.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, we need to do something more positive. We
do.
What can we do that's positive? Let's see. Oh, I've got one. Let's go down to the media. We've talked about some different initiatives on the part of state legislatures to try and address social media and age verification. This is also from The Verge. The headline is Judge Blocks Mississippi Law That Required Age Verification on Social Media. And this was from July the 2nd. I'm having to squint here because I don't have my glasses on. I actually heard about this from the Twit podcast. I don't listen to This Week in Tech all the time, but, it's like 2 hours or something. It's a long podcast. But, one of the reasons why this is, thrown out is that it is just so difficult to do age verification and not, stomp on, rights that people have under the Constitution and in our country. And so this law in Mississippi would have required age verification and parental consent for all teens in order to make any kind of account on social media. And so the Supreme Court had issued a ruling the same day that challenged the social media laws in Florida and Texas. Those were seeking to regulate social media companies' content moderation. And in those cases, the Supreme Court sent them back to lower courts, but they made clear that platforms' content moderation and curation was protected speech. So a couple issues here, but sometimes we hear and see politicians sort of grandstanding and, here, let's lambast social media, let's lambast TikTok, and those kinds of things. I do think that the whole prospect of age verification is fraught with danger. But I also think that it's really important that parents are on the ball with this and that we recognize, not just social media, but all kinds of apps, AI apps. I mean, I really, really encourage all parents out there or caregivers in any stripe to have some restrictions on app installations because you do not want your child having an unrestricted ability to install whatever app that they want in this day of AI algorithms. That line between the objectionable and the offensive and the quote normal, it's a smaller wall than ever. And I think that while this is positive from a freedom of speech perspective, and it certainly could have caused a lot of unintended consequences and a lot of mayhem, the fact that social media and apps and our addiction to our screens and all that is an issue, is certainly true. But those things I do not think we're going to be resolved by this law in Mississippi or these other proposed laws.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's I don't know. I feel like oftentimes these things tend to inspire the lowest form of the argument. I think neither Dr. Fryer and I would say that we shouldn't be doing nothing about this. In fact, if anything, we've been vocal advocates for regulation of all these technologies for some time now. It's just that we have to do something that's effective, right? And I know the age verification seems like it's a great solution, but it seems like a very expensive and not effective way to deal with this problem. Like we need much more aggressive ways of dealing with this for sure. And then related to that, or actually only somewhat related to that, another article I wanted to mention is also related to media, is that there's an interesting article in Wired from a couple weeks ago about the Paris Olympics. And in a lot of ways, I'm kind of, I always like the Olympics. So I guess I would say that that I would be candidate for watching this no matter what. But the Wired article talks a little bit about the way about the ways that the upcoming Olympics, especially the NBC coverage of the Olympics, is really interesting. There are a lot more cameras, a lot more social media plays during this time period, and there is tons of cutting edge technology being used, including a lot of AI plays. The AI tools will help deliver highlights, especially for events that aren't being live covered by anchors from individual countries, in order to make a better coverage, especially for outside those countries that can send aggressive media presences there. And I'm really excited because I remember watching the 2008 Olympic Games, and China was showing off some of their advanced technology, and the fact that you could literally watch any event at any time, no matter if it was the ping pong opening round or the gold medal game in basketball. I think that's cool, and I think it's really helps the spirit of the games.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty amazing. I'm trying to think of. It'll be interesting. There's some really kind of obscure things that I think have been made Olympic sports, haven't they? What's the game where you throw the bean bags into the cornhole? Is cornhole an Olympic game?
I can't imagine that it is, but although it's I mean, it's a huge national sport now in the United States.
Okay, no, it's not. All right. Well, good. I went ahead and
I'm gonna hop off for 1 second. You continue. I'll be right back.
okay. Well, while Jason hops off for a second, I'll comment that I dropped in the chat a paywall-free version of that Wired article. Like many news organizations, Wired will give you a certain number of free articles, and then they want you to go ahead and log in some cases, pay. Sometimes, and I do pay for some media, but one of the tools, and this is the one that I used in this case, is archive.today. I actually sometimes will go directly to this archive.ph, and it really is pretty incredible. We should do a little research to find out what the background of this site is, like where it's run, and I don't even know. We gotta Google this. What is the domain PH? I don't even know what that is, but it is that's Philippines. Okay. It's just kind of remarkable. So whether it's New York Times, Washington Post, Wired, I've in the past few months, sometimes it won't be active and it'll forward to different things. So archive.today is the more, it has sometimes been the one that has worked for me, but that archive.ph works. And, it's interesting. I mean, certainly news and media organizations, they need to make money. But, I definitely prefer to have open access to my news. And so one of the things that's fortunate being associated with a school is that, we have some subscriptions. So we do have a subscription to the New York Times, and I take full advantage of that. And it has the ability to be able to have gift links. And so a lot of times in our show notes, you'll see gift links, and those will be links that don't require payment. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to an article that I put down under security. Of course, the assassination attempt on former President Trump has been a huge item in the news, and there's all kinds of discussion and talking about that. I'm actually in the midst of teaching this 2-week course. It's a micro-credential course through the Media Education Lab on teaching the conspiracies. And so, as you may or may not have guessed, there are a huge flurry of conspiracy theories that have come up as a result of that assassination attempt. But this isn't a conspiracy. This is a report from The Verge, which is kind of eye-opening. So this is from July 19th. And the headline is, the FBI got into the Trump rally shooter's phone in just 40 minutes. and it says that they used an unreleased Celebrite tool to open the phone. So we've talked before on the show about some Israeli companies that have some digital forensics tools, and they sometimes, have nation states. They sometimes have, all kinds of groups that will pay them for their skills and their tools. But being able to open up a phone like that within 40 minutes is, pretty impressive for law enforcement. Most of what we've heard about the assassination attempt has been pretty negative. I think that, again, if we want to bring that back to a classroom or a digital citizenship perspective, it's important. And maybe I don't know, I'm probably not going to talk about this with my kids because I try to just avoid politics and things that are very, polarizing. But all of us need to recognize that anything that's on our phone, anything that's digital, can be hacked and can be accessed. And so that was a headline that caught my attention. So I just went down to security. I did not jump yet into the AI rabbit hole, Dr. Neiffer. I needed to wait for your guiding hand to do that.
So. Sounds good. There's one more quick article I want to do on the Apple side, and then we should jump into the AI wormhole, as it turns out. So there's a pretty interesting video released by The Verge. This was today, and it's talking about the real reasons why Apple is unlikely to take the iPad and allow you to install the Mac OS on it. And one of the things that's become absolutely true in the last few iterations of the iPad is that they now run, not just desktop class chips, they run desktop chips now, right? And so the M1 and the M4 are available in the Pro models, and usually with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, which is more than enough to run Mac OS. And to be very honest, I would be very much into an iPad that ran the Mac OS. For me, that would make the iPad absolutely, a laptop replacement for me. So the Verge video actually uses, screen sharing to kind of mimic what that might look like. And, they report, looked like it was pretty darn functional. And they go into the fact that it's pretty unlikely that Apple will go into this direction. But I have to say, I feel like that's a real mistake on Apple's part. That, I do know that the Mac Mini, the M1 Mac Mini, which, you can get the base model now from Walmart for $650, which is cheaper than the equivalent iPad that would have the same amount of space and RAM in it. But, for all the Apple planning executives listening to our podcast, please know that you would at least have one customer in me that would likely be super duper into that.
Interesting. So this is a video and I can't really scan it the same way that I would an article. So I just took the link, threw it into youtubetranscript.com, created a Google Doc, downloaded it as text, threw it into Claude and said, please summarize the key ideas. And Claude gives me nine bullet points of the key ideas. I think that right there, being able to summarize, longer articles and pieces. I mean, we've got obviously, abstracts and things like that, but being able to do that and query articles. And I think I might have mentioned on the show last time, but I think this is going to be one of the more challenging years for teachers because of how advanced these AI tools are, and most likely how far behind most of us are. So
yeah. Well, and we're going to have to talk our students into not taking shortcuts in a way that we've never had to, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that, it's time to dig out the textbooks and the Scantrons again, for sure. But we should absolutely be thinking about ways that we can, help our students understand why assignments are important for the development of their learning.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this question to you and then we can segue into the AI. I didn't answer this question really well. I had a chance, I guess last Wednesday or Tuesday, to talk at a local Rotary Club about artificial intelligence. And one of the gentlemen there asked, basically, how do you think we're going to avoid having a lot of lazy students who just use these tools to not think? And if that happens at scale, that seems like it would be bad for citizenship. Do you have a thought about that? Do you think that's a risk?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's one lever we're going to pull on. I think it's a lot of levers we're going to pull on, right? And I think part of it is going back to the discussion we had earlier this year about things like cell phone bans. Like, I do think that we should be limiting, maybe not eliminating, but limiting the amount of technology in classrooms up until a certain age, right? Like, it seems to me that one of the ways to deal with this is just to slowly be very thoughtful about how we pull in, automation into the learning environment. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is that there is some, in my humble opinion, very persuasive research about, if we explain to students why we're doing something, or kind of the metacognition behind certain activities or lessons or projects or otherwise engagements, that students are more likely to do well on it, to engage more in it. And I think we should take advantage of that. I do think that our students are more cynical about technology perhaps than we are. There seems to be some evidence that Gen Zers, is that where our K-12 kids are right now? Gen whatever comes after Z.
Those young whippersnappers.
Them's youngins, are a little cynical about tech, right? It doesn't mean they're putting down their phones per se, but there may be a way for us to be very, thoughtful about how we implement. And then, and again, it's certainly not a, ban all tech, because we have to teach them how to use it. But if we are, kind of thoughtfully move along in this process, I think it's the best chance we have to, not create, students that are very dependent on a model for doing the thinking for them, which I think really does put the risk of both humanity and democracy.
Yeah. I think if we leave our assessments the same as they've been in the past, we put ourselves at risk,
Yeah.
because the models are very good at generating the kinds of things we've typically asked students to produce for assignments and projects. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, where would you like to jump in? We've got new stuff, search disruption, AI and jobs, evaluating AI, AI and lying, copyright, intellectual property, bad actors, disinformation, AI and education.
Well, let's start with kind of some new stuff that's out, and a lot of this is super duper in the weeds, but I do think that there is some logic in talking about it. So first and foremost, in the last 24 hours, two different open source models have been released, or actually one's open source and one's a commercial model. But no, actually, I think they're both open source model. Both Llama from Meta and Mixtral have released new models in the last 24 hours, and the Meta one is out there. It's version 3.1, which is apparently monumentally ahead of version 3.0, which was just released a couple of months ago.
And that's Llama. Meta's is Llama.
Yeah. The largest model is trained off of 408 billion tokens or data points, which is a shocking amount of data points, and probably exceeds some of the middle ground commercial models that are available. And then Mixtral today released another model that they say beats the Meta 3.3 win models in a lot of tests. And the point of this is that these are all models that aren't nearly as commercially expensive to implement than the commercial models are, because they're open source nature. As it turns out, you may soon enough be able to access tools that very inexpensively provide you really amazing AI functionality without the expense of the so-called frontier models. So we're talking about ChatGPT and Claude and some of the models related to that. And so there is a lot of interesting stuff going on there. And this morning I was able to, as part of my anything LLM that I talked about last week, it's not the 400 billion data point model from Meta, but I was able to download one of the Svelter versions of Llama 3.1 and run it locally on my machine. And, it's not giving me, next level Claude vibes for sure, but for 80% of what I do with AI on a daily basis would be more than good enough. And it costs me effectively $0 to run it.
And one of the most significant things about that is going to be guardrails, right? Because we have, for these frontier models and these really high profile systems, I mean, I think this is for all AI systems, we have some level of attempt on the part of developers to have some guardrails. But when it comes to these open source models and the models that you run on your own machine, it really is going to be wide open in terms of what those systems can do. So I don't think anybody has an answer for that. And it's going to be both exciting and good, and it's going to be challenging, and it's definitely going to be challenging us from a power standpoint. We've talked about this before, just the raw amount of electricity that is required for these models, and that is just going up. I don't have it in the show notes, but I watched a documentary. I think it's about Ilya, who I think he may have been a board member or somebody. He was high in OpenAI. I don't know what his relationship was to Sam Altman prior to Sam Altman's temporary removal and being restored. But, this is an extremely knowledgeable and capable person in the middle of AI development at OpenAI. And, imagining the systems we're using today in 5 to 10 years being like 100,000 times faster and better than they are today. I don't think our brains are wrapping around this. I mean, Jason and I are old enough. And Peggy, we've lived through hype cycles, right? And I've been seeing articles about that, and we're through this hype cycle and things. But I don't think this is just hype. I mean, this isn't cryptocurrency. I don't think, this is a real game changer. And the more you use these AI tools and the more you see them improving, and then just the incredible capability, whether it's creativity in image generation, or whether it's, being able to handle just enormous amounts of data and processing, it just is, even for somebody who's been working with them intimately on a weekly basis for a year and a half, almost 2 years, it really is hard to get our heads around it. So I appreciate you getting into the weeds, Jason. We could call this AI in the weeds, because I'm using ideogram literally like every single day, and I learned about that from you. I couldn't teach a course about political polarization and try to generate images off of ChatGPT and a lot of other tools. And so anyway, I appreciate being able to get into it.
I will also note that I canceled my Midjourney account last week, and so I'm the only paid-for tool I'm using now for image generation is ideogram, and to be honest, it's more than I would ever need, and so I hope that continues to develop and grow over time. So
I'm paying for ChatGPT, Claude Pro, and ideogram. Those are my three right now. So were you ever paying for Perplexity?
And I'm paying for Perplexity, OpenAI. I canceled Poe. I canceled Midjourney. I'm paying for Claude.
Okay,
that might be it.
Peggy is saying ideogram. So yes, Peggy. I'll drop a link directly into my profile. You can see all kinds of things there. So, and I'm not saying this is one that we're going to, show this to all the kids, but ideogram.ai. And then to get the user, it's /u/W Fryer. So you can see all of my pinned images. And then also you can click a tab there for public. And I've been doing a lot of stuff for my class. It's unbelievable. It is really unbelievable.
Yeah, it super duper is. So, and then one other tool I wanted to one other kind of thing from that tool list I want to point out too. This is from VentureBeat on July 19th, but it's talking about how Apple has released some of their models into Hugging Face, which is kind of the website for
open source
rolling out models, and it's also the interface that you can use to download to some of the localized model processes. But the reason why I mention it is because there's been a lot of discussion on there, and I saw this article that summarizes it pretty well. But in essence, Apple's models are pretty good, and in a lot of ways, they're outperforming Mistral, which I think is one of the considered to be one of the better kind of tier B model groups. But after all of this kind of, I guess, hand wringing about AI falling behind in this. As it turns out, not only are they going to be using ChatGPT and other models, as they talked about during their event earlier this year, that they're working on some models themselves that require no other model to be able to perform. So, as usual, people like to hand wring about Apple's apparent demise, and once again, it's just not true. So
yeah, well, and yeah, this tweet from July 19th and that article from Philip Schmid says Apple has entered the game. Apple just released and then the details of the LLM. And you knew that Apple's getting in this, right? No tech company in fact, no company is going to ignore AI. Every single company is going to be paying attention to it. And anyway, so yeah, I'm really interested to see. I don't know if you have this happen, but I really am frustrated with the Google Assistant and with Siri, especially because I'm now talking to ChatGPT directly through the iPhone app so much. And so what I'm hoping, because do you know when iOS 18 gets out of beta? And
I'm sure it'll happen like in August or September, but I'm also using the beta now. But I don't think those new Siri and Apple Intelligence features are going to happen until much later this year, and that's sad because I think Siri is also has become less and less functional over time too. And I didn't put an article in this week, but did you see that they're going to be taking Madam A and putting most of her features behind a paywall?
No, really.
Yeah,
Oh
there's
my
going to be,
gosh.
apparently there's like a 30 that over time that unit at Amazon has like a $30 billion deficit in that particular unit. And one of the ways they're going to make it up is creating like a pro version of
Wow.
Madame A for the purposes of helping make some of that money back. And it just seems like I'm sure there are some people that really do rely on that particular platform for some way, shape, or form. I do not, as it turns out, but I just think that's silly.
Talking to Peggy a little bit in the chat room about Ideogram. I probably should do like a little webinar about just Ideogram. There's a lot of things to love about it. It creates a magic prompt. So you'll put in a prompt, but then it elaborates to do this very amazing prompt. It always gives you 4 choices of images, and then you can always click remix and modify that one, or you can upload your own. So one of the stories I told was about this bear that went through our camp, and I didn't take a picture of it. So I had a picture of our tent, and afterwards I had uploaded that picture, and I said, put a bear in it, and it did basically. I mean, it wasn't exactly, it was a little bit different, but yep, definitely well worth playing with. Okay. Let's see. What do you want to go to? How about AI and lying? You want to do that one?
Yeah. This one, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, it's the answer in my mind to the criticism that AI fibs, right? And it does. I mean, I tried not to use the hallucination term anymore because I think that's problematic for a variety of reasons.
Anthropomorphic.
Yeah, and it's also a symptom of a mental health disorder. So let's not let's be careful with our language there. But in context of this, what's super interesting about what OpenAI, this is from their blog, they started talking about ways that that they're thinking about, kind of in the background of the things we ask of things like ChatGPT in order to diminish the chance of it making a mistake. And so they have an internal platform they call Critic GPT, which essentially critiques the output as in real time, both to provide their internal trainers an opportunity to look at the output, but also perhaps in real time push the model to somewhat of a better conclusion. Not in really unlike what I do sometimes with this is that I tend to use the augmentation model, as we talked about in previous weeks. I'll provide a document to work off of to diminish the chance of it telling a half or non-truths. But if I'm not doing that, one of the ways that I try to make sure that the output is accurate is by running it through multiple models at once. And so essentially what Critic GPT is in the background is an opportunity for the software to criticize itself as it's engaging you in an answer.
Well, and this ability of AIs to iteratively improve, I mean, this is at the heart of machine learning and what's happening with the model. It's sort of like, you with games and something that's very well defined, they can play thousands of iterations of games in just a short amount of time. There are some limits, and I'll talk about in my Geek of the Week something related to coding, but like ChatGPT, I think in Claude 2, like they can't run a Python script or a JavaScript that you're having them create right now. But this ability to have the AI critique and improve is kind of mind blowing. So when you interact with these things, have you had a spooky moment lately? I mean, because every once in a while I'll have something where it's just like I really feel like I'm interacting with an intelligence. It's not human level. It's not like it can do everything. But you have spooky moments that happen kind of like that where you're like, whoa.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I really like doing with, particularly ChatGPT is really great at this, is that if I'm having problems, like if I can describe something but I can't remember the name of it, it's really good at describing. If I can describe everything I can, and I can say whatever half thoughts that I have,
half baked, yeah.
And it's able to usually help me describe the phenomenon. And this is also true of occasionally. I mean, I'm an idea guy. I have lots of ideas. One of the reasons why I like engaging with information is that it helps me come up with interesting solutions to problems. But there have been times when I thought I came up with something really novel and interesting, and I do a Google search and I can't seem to find anything about it. And then talk to ChatGPT and say, I have this idea. And I ramble on for 1 or 2 minutes about the idea, and I say, "Is that something that's familiar to you?" And they're like, "Oh, it's this." So I go and look at it. It's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't have this idea. This was someone else's idea to start off with."
What's that tool that you told about a few weeks ago? Sort of like Evernote, but you're like putting all your information into it, like what's that?
Notion is the tool.
Is that still good? Are you still
It's
liking it?
amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's turned in what I've always wanted in a second brain concept.
Yeah.
But it has really great apps, but also there's an AI layer on top of it. If you want to talk to all your stuff, you're able to do that. And I've been pretty aggressively pushing things into it for 5 or 6 weeks now. And it's a really nice second brain in that, I'm running across articles or things I want to put in my standard like AI presentations. And, no matter where I put them, I never get back to it. Right. But with Notion, I have a list of, here's things I want to review the next time I'm doing my presentation.
I tried to use ChatGPT to create my own list manager, and I ended up being frustrated with it because it was giving because I ended up getting over 200 things, but like then being able to say, let's have these categories and then let's have these lists or whatever. So and then you have to be in the same conversation. The way that it works, it will not remember right now. I don't know how to make it access an external data source. I suppose there's going to be ways to do that with APIs, and I've thought about Gemini or whatever, trying to be fancy. But I think I need to give Notion a try because that's what I have wanted to do is, dump all these things in there. Can you query Notion in like if you wanted to prioritize and you wanted it to help you do that? Can you talk to it like you would ChatGPT or Claude as well?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I really haven't used it in that way, but I'm pretty sure that's how the AI layer on top of it works.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give that a shot. And I'm just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, when Dr. Neiffer says this is an amazing tool, what was that ad, the E.F. Hutton? When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen, when Dr. Neiffer's in the AI weeds, everyone should pay
that's
close attention, and especially when he's excited. So thank you for sharing that again, because I was about to go back through all of our notes because I know it's somewhere in the show notes. But anyway, it's because I'm one of these people, life hack wise, that have been always trying to try different tasks and, using Google Tasks and forget the milk and all these different things. So yeah, good.
Absolutely.
All right. What else? We've got about 10 more minutes.
Well, let's see here.
We never did the copyright one on the music.
Oh, let's do that for sure.
Okay. So this one, oh my gosh, it's so old, from June 24th. This one is about copyright and music. And again, thanks to Jason, I learned about these tools, and I did actually share these with my kids, and it's pretty amazing. The headline from musictech.com is record labels sue AI music generators, Suno and Udio, alleging unimaginable scales of copyright infringement. The lawsuit is seeking damages in $150,000 for each infringed work. And basically what it appears has happened is these companies have scraped, basically the entire music library of everything that they could get a hold of. And when you said, you say something like, give me a love song in the style of James Taylor and, such and such. I mean, it is very evident that it has an exact copy of that. And similar, I guess, to the New York Times. I don't think they've settled that court case yet with the New York Times and OpenAI. That court case, again, was based on web scraping and the model being able to essentially, give you verbatim entire articles or large portions of articles. And this whole idea that, this AI isn't like a human that, has that you would consider, well, of course it can read it. It has a photographic memory. So anyway, I think these are important to follow. I think all AI models that I know of, I mean, they all rely on how much data can be ingested. And so Anthropic is one, I think, that's trying to put a higher, focus on ethics. I kind of think that since the record industry is so experienced and knowledgeable about lawsuits and copyright, I sort of think they're going to prevail in this case. And so I don't know if Suno and Udio are still available. I haven't even, tried to access them yet. But this is going to be an interesting case to watch. And, possibly the implications are going to be that, you're going to have to license. But when you look at all the money that's, I don't know, I do think content creators deserve to be paid and compensated for their work. It's a weird thing to have these AIs, which are not sentient, but we're moving in that direction. And essentially what you're saying is, you have a photographic memory, so you're not allowed to listen to this music, read this article unless you pay. Every AI has got to pay to play, is basically what the lawsuits, I guess, are saying. So yeah. What is your take? Well,
I mean, we talked about this 7 or 8 months ago when the Hard Fork podcast featured an attorney, an intellectual property attorney, and I just keep thinking back to what she said, that obviously that the way it's playing out, there's no way these tools will go unchecked. But one of the ways they will be checked is by a licensing deal, right? And the RIAA and its member groups receive a healthy amount of money every month from Spotify. By far the world's largest music streaming service. Whether that turns into money for artists or not is really a completely different situation, right? Which is what I'd be worried about there. But yeah, the RIAA has 20 years of experience, 25 years of experience now suing the snot out of file sharers and are continuing to go after, these platforms around the world. So there's just no way that these tools will leave this unscathed with a licensing deal.
Interesting. I just went to Udio, logged in. I told it to create a love song about a woman named Shelley in the style of Billy Joel Piano Man. And it said, your account is not authorized for this. So I wonder if they've put some guardrails around specificity to musical artists. I do think that we saw OpenAI and ChatGPT responding to that New York Times with immediately visible guardrails. And I think we've talked about this, that I've had the experience of like feeling like it's downgraded, like it couldn't do what it was doing before. And so it looks like perhaps Udio has done that same thing.
Yeah.
All right. What else would you like to do, sir? We got a few more minutes.
Well, let's see here. Let's talk about those AI and education articles. The first thing I shared there, and this is a couple weeks old, but I think it's important. There is a new school that's been kind of teased on social media, referred to as Eureka Labs, and Eureka Labs is a startup that's, according to them, building a new kind of school that's AI native. So quoting from the website, how we approach an ideal experience for learning something new. For example, in the case of physics, one can imagine working through a very high quality course materials together with Fennyman, who is there to guide you every step of the way. Unfortunately, subject matter experts who are deeply passionate, great at teaching, and infinitely patient and fluent in all the world's languages are very scarce. And so we can't possibly do that for the 8 billion around us. So they're basically talking about, doing a school that is very captivated by AI tutoring or the one-on-one opportunities it provides. So no details yet, of course. A lot of teasing it over social media, and I've seen a lot of kind of social media big tech commentators talking about how they're very interested to see how this is going to play out. But I did think this was an interesting start, perhaps, to something big in the AI education space.
Did you see their Let's Build a Storyteller course?
No.
So
yeah, the world's obvious best course. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Oh man, how fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that one of the first lessons that I dabbled with AI with my students involved just some little fun readers theaters that we did, and I had the kids come up with characters and some kind of a conflict and some kind of resolution, and then we gave it to the AI and said, make a, I think we were trying to say 4-minute or so many character screenplay with this. I think that is going to be interesting. And as I do my, family oral history unit and we work on recording and things like that, I think I haven't done finger puppet shows for a while, and I got to dig out my finger puppets and figure out how to get my green screen backgrounds going and stuff. But that's one of those areas where you can really sometimes be wowed when you invite the language model to be creative. I think that's one of the ways that it thrives. So that's pretty interesting to do a course on storytelling.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. And then what about this Google blog, 3 things?
Yeah, so I thought this one was a pretty interesting story too. This one is from our good friends at Google, and the headline certainly pulled me in. 3 things parents and students told us about how generative can support learning. And it's really interesting because I haven't had as much interaction with non-nerdle parents than on the AI issue. I did talk to a few parents, friends of mine that have kids in school age kids about a year ago on this issue, but haven't talked about it as much lately. I will say that I know a lot of teachers and administrators have had some tough conversations with parents that either weren't savvy to AI and were shocked when their student was accused of using AI to complete assignments, and it ended up that the student had been perhaps not 100% truthful with their parents on that process, as sometimes occurs, as we all know. But more importantly, I just think there's a general lack of understanding of how these tools work. But Google has been surveying and talking with parents and students, and the 3 things that they wanted, or that they said the parents and students wanted us to know, is, first of all, they wanted more real-time feedback for parents and providing in their text up-to-the-minute windows into how their children are doing in their coursework. Parents can intervene more quickly when needed, understanding where they might be pushing too hard, and know how they should put their focus in the future. And I think that's really been the onus around open data initiatives in schools over the last 15 years, right? Like most schools now have a portal that you can get into that tells you how your students doing in relative real time, and adding some AI-based analysis to that would be interesting. And then perhaps a little less obvious, enhanced learning about unfamiliar subjects, using AI to go deeper into a subject, and then also customized pathways for people with learning differences, I thought was an interesting way to go. And unfortunately, personalized learning is a term that is just so overused and underdefined in education. But I think that those of us that are relatively hopeful about AI agree that it can be a really powerful tool, even if it's just in the hands of a teacher, to help create customized learning experiences for students that really need adaptation.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have done it again and managed to drone on here for an hour. So I think it's time for Geeks of the Week. I think I'll go first, as I'm seeing that you
Yes, that's a good call.
maybe adding yours right now. So I've got two quick ones. The first one is I'm on a new social media platform. It's called Spoutable. I just figured, I'm not sharing enough places. So no, actually, I found this because of a book that I'm reading, and it's interesting. The app has some features that are pretty cool, and it lets you edit one time to fix spelling errors, misspellings. But there's some other things. But it's really designed to basically not allow hate speech. And oh, hey, I have a follower now. I didn't have a follower earlier today. So anyway, it's very Twitter-like, similar 200, it's not 200, maybe 300 characters. So Spoutable. Don't know if there's a lot of educators on there. Haven't found a lot of people yet, but it looks interesting. And then this is my AI coding story. So I am in the midst of teaching this coding camp for kids. We are using mainly Scratch, but we also are using Make Code Arcade by Microsoft. And I had a student yesterday who created her code for this pizza chase game, and it wouldn't work. And I, glanced at it. But if you've ever tried to debug code, many times you can't just glance at it and see. And so I loaded up over 100 pages of documentation of the JavaScript for this, because this is not only block-based, but you can work in JavaScript, you can work in Python. And so I went over to JavaScript, grabbed both files, uploaded them, said, hey, tell me why this one works and this one doesn't. It told me immediately what needed to be fixed. I should have been able to see it clearly, but we had that conversation today. This was a very simple case, but I am really excited about it, because not that I don't want to do, great. I want to grade and assess, but being able to leverage those kinds of tools with Scratch, it doesn't have this flippable interface to say, hey, show me that in JavaScript, but Make Code does. So I tried actually to do a custom GPT, had a little less success with that. Tried it with Claude and had more success. I also tried to just say, hey, make me a 10-level maze, all this stuff. And I haven't quite gotten it to do that yet, but playing with the coding aspects of this is not something that everybody's doing. And again, it's one of these things that's like, oh my gosh, this is so, so powerful.
Yep, that's great. Well, I do have one to share, as a matter of fact. And one of the things that most of my friends and colleagues are on iOS devices, and I absolutely love air sharing to other individuals, right? Being able to send a photo to someone across the phone is really great. But as it turns out,
AirDrop.
Yeah, there we go. AirDrop or Air Share. It starts with Air, right?
I knew what you were saying. It's fine.
Yeah, there you go. But I do have a lot of friends on Android devices, and there's actually several tools that do this, but the one that I've been using that's completely open source is called Local Send, and it's an app in the iOS store, it's an app in the Android store, and if you have people on both platforms, if you're on the same wireless network, all you need to do is both open the app, and you're able to share photos, documents, whatever, back and forth, and so very, very cool. Technology, and very useful, I think, for those that are in a cross-platform world.
Huge, huge. All right. Well, we want to say thank you. I suspect our second live viewer may be my dad in Kansas, but we know Peggy George has been with us. This has been the EdTech Situation Room. We want to encourage everyone to check out our show notes, which you'll find at edtechsr.com/links. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. Unfortunately, Facebook has changed their rules and you have to have, is it 100 followers to live stream? So anyway, we aren't able to live stream to Facebook, but anyway, whatever. You can go to edtechsr.com, download small MP3 audio versions as well as video versions. But it's, the fastest way is to just come live or find us on YouTube. But we are on Facebook. And we are normally here on Wednesday nights, and I'm so thankful for these regular opportunities to sit down with the knowledgeable Jason Neiffer, because as you can tell, he is, I would say, he's less than a 1%er when it comes to AI tools, his knowledge of them and playing with them. So it's just pretty cool to be able to, swap ideas. So Jason, when you're not here sharing your AI wisdom, where can folks find you?
Oh, I was just going to say the pleasure is really all mine, Dr. Fryer, but you can find me at aicentrist.com.
Very good. And you can find me at wesfryer.com. And I'm actually writing on my Substack a little bit more, but lots of links. And I'm sure that, there's just going to be all kinds of people rushing to Spoutable right now to set up accounts and start sharing. So this has been the EdTech Situation Room. We encourage you to join us live if you can. And if you can't, just still reach out to us. Let us know that you're listening. We hope that you stay safe, stay savvy, and we hope to see you soon on another episode of the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.
Good night.